Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles characters as dragons is the kind of video that I always figured I was going to get to eventually, and now with the Mutant Mayhem movie coming up and looking super cool and stylish, I figured, why not now? Gonna take some of the turtles and some of their villains and make dragons out of them. Let's go!
Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show.
When it comes to agile and nimble animals, one of the last things to come to many people's minds would likely be turtles. They are stereotypically regarded as a species known for their slow speeds, which is why the legend of the American shinobi dragon turtles was so fascinating to me as a boy. But now that I've grown, I'm more fascinated still in realizing that these tales likely held a fair deal of truth to them. I had heard the stories of the shinobi dragons as a child, as many children did, bewildered by the strange troop of 4 incredibly agile and stealthy dragon turtles that, 1,000 years ago, defended the now-lost Kawaba kingdom of my world that was rocked by dark sorcery and mutated beasts. A cruel warlord by the name of Oroku Saki had traveled across the seas from Japan with specific intent to claim the Kawaba kingdom for himself. You see, the region upon which the kingdom stood was believed to be a point of what was once known as a magic meridian, a place at which anyone who could channel magical abilities would have their skills further elevated, and where mystical events were more likely to occur naturally. Saki's intent was to take the kingdom for his own and utilize its inherent magic to create all manner of monsters and beasts to fight under his command and to expand his reign across further kingdoms still. But the creatures who would ultimately defeat him would not be what he expected. You see, he only knew of this kingdom and its magical properties because of a former ally of his named Homoto Yoshi, who had fled Saki's ranks to come to the Kawaba kingdom and live a peaceful life, serving his new community and elevating his own inherent magical gifts. Of course, when Oroku arrived, Homoto knew he had to take measures to defend Kawaba from him. Homoto often trained with his magic near a pond just outside the kingdom's main walls, and there he'd enjoy the presence of 4 dire turtles of different breeds, within which he sensed elevated awareness and inherent magical potential. Upon Oroku's arrival, Homoto went to these turtles and summoned all his inner might to elevate the magical potential he sensed within these creatures. They all transformed and mutated into what many believe to be the first American dragon turtles, and some claim that all dragon turtles of this region, such as the bladed dragon turtle, are spawned from these original 4. These dragon turtles then all followed under Homoto's direction, for the most part, and would fight to defend the Kawaba kingdom with all their varied strengths and abilities. Though having magical dragons on his side would not make Homoto's task to defeat Oroku an easy one, as the warlord would also find a way to make some magical beasts of his own. Now, people who have been watching the channel for a while will likely remember that I actually have done one Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle dragon before, Leonardo as a dragon, in an old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as different types of monsters episode. But it was a long time ago. I was never super satisfied with how that one turned out. I don't actually do a new one of him in this, but in the lore I made sure to write in a sort of workaround for how that dragon turtle species that I claimed was our Leonardo dragon could just be a descendant of these original Ninja Turtles dragons. This first one, Raphael here, is probably my favorite one from the episode. I was specifically taking inspiration for his design from snapping turtles, mostly in the face and a little bit in the shell, because in the Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series, each of the different turtles is referred to as being a different type of turtle. Raphael being a snapping turtle, Donatello being a spiny soft-shelled turtle, and I forget what the other 2 are at the moment. And I felt like that would be a good way to add a little bit more variety into each of the turtles, even though I only actually do 2 of them in this episode because I also wanted to work with some of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles villains. Now, Oroku Saki himself was not nearly as proficient at magic as Homoto, but he did employ many skilled sorcerers, willing to do whatever he commanded. One of his most reliable was a man he actually found within the walls of the Kawaba kingdom, the sorcerer Baxterius, who'd once served the queen of the land, but had been released from her service for attempting magic that the ruler considered to be too dangerous. When Hometo's dragon turtles began tearing a swath through Saki's clan of warriors that he'd brought to fight for him, he charged Baxterius with making his own mutated dragon beasts to fight for him and slay these meddling turtles. Baxterius would go on to create many beasts, but the first was a set of 2 mutated creatures. By drawing the life force out of living dragons that Araku's warriors had captured, Baxterius transformed a warthog and rhinoceros into a powerful, if a bit dim-witted, set of dragons that would do as Araku commanded. The first of the 2 is recorded in the legends as the Rocksteady Sky Rhino. As you may have assumed from that name, this was the dragon mutated from the rhinoceros. It possessed no particularly unique skills, but, like the dragon it oft fought alongside, it was incredibly difficult to kill. It could take all manner of attacks from the dragon turtles, leaving a battle looking torn and battered, and still come back in a fury soon after if its master commanded. What these first 2 of Araku's mutated dragons lacked in inherent intelligence, they more than made up for in persistence and durability. But they still wouldn't be enough, and Araku would eventually feel he needed to take more drastic measures to defeat the dragon turtles. Now, originally for this episode, I was planning to do a Bebop and Rocksteady kinda set of partner pieces, like the 2 dragons flying alongside each other that worked as their own, but also kind of looked cool beside each other. Sort of like what I did with my Godzilla vs. Kong dragons that I did in my second episode of Godzilla Monsters as Dragons from a couple months ago, which, if you want to go back and check that out, I'll link it in the cards. I still think that's one of the best dragon episodes. But then I realized that there was another Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles villain that I really wanted to work with, and I also still wanted to do 2 of the turtles in this episode, so I was like, okay, I'll cut out the Bebop one for now, and, if this ends up getting a sequel, I'll probably do it in the next episode. But I was really excited to do a Rhino dragon, because, anyone who knows me fairly well knows that I really love the Rhino from Spider-Man as a villain, so this would essentially be a similar type of dragon to what I would do for that, except with a bit more of Rocksteady's colors worked in. And I like this one a lot, but I do think I probably could have pushed this one a little bit more into dragon territory. Like right now it kind of just looks like a gold-plated rhino with wings and a longer tail, which again I think looks cool enough, but taking it a bit farther into dragon territory might have been an interesting way to go. Although I will say it looks fairly unique as far as my dragons go. So, maybe it's a good thing that I didn't go farther into the dragon side of it. But you can all let me know what you think in the comments. Let's take a look.
Classic mid-video interruption here to say that if you want the art from this episode, it will be made available as posters on my Teespring store, and there's also shirts and sweaters and ink bundles and a bunch of stuff up on there. But also if you want the inks from this episode to color yourself, as well as access to my inks and high-resolution art a day before a video is released, plus a bonus podcast series where I go more in depth talking about my design and writing process, you might want to consider supporting me over on Patreon, where for $5 a month you get access to all that extra stuff. All that will be linked in the description, but for now, back into more art. Let's go!
Battles raged for a year between Araku Saki and the dragons of Homoto Yoshi, and Saki was growing fed up. He hadn't anticipated his quest being so difficult to achieve, so he commanded Baxterius to take more drastic measures. He wanted the sorcerer to come up with a way to transform him into a dragon. He was done ordering his beasts around. Araku wanted the ability to become one himself and slay the dragon turtles himself. It took Baxterius time to concoct the right blend of spells and creatures to draw life force from, but this is also a point at which legends diverge depending on the versions you've heard. Some believe that Araku was transformed and gained the ability to change back and forth between his human and dragon shape. This would not necessarily be unprecedented, as I'm personally aware of multiple beings with the ability to take dragon form, some even native to this world. Still, other versions of the legend state that he was trapped in his draconic form and devoured Baxterius as punishment for this. Regardless of which version of the tale one believes, though, it is universally stated that his dragon form became the greatest threat to the Kawaba kingdom thus far. While his warrior clan often tried to do their work in the shadows, upon coming into his new form, Araku, as the shredding archdragon, took quickly to the skies above the kingdom and began bathing the streets in scorching purple flames. The shinobi dragon turtles of course came onto the scene quickly, but with his sword-like claws and incredible fighting speed carried over from his well-trained human form, Saki was able to greatly wound each of the dragon turtles and likely could have slain them all if Homoto hadn't started casting projectile spells from the kingdom below, luring the shredding dragon to him. Uraku had an obvious vendetta against Homoto in particular, so a chance to devour his once ally was more tempting than finishing off the dragon turtles. The turtles may have all been injured, but the second they saw their master threatened, it reinvigorated their fighting spirit. They swirled in a four-pronged attack down towards the shredding dragon again, and working in unison, letting one attack be followed immediately by another and another, each of the dragon brethren utilizing their own particular skills in the battle. They were not able to yet slay the shredding dragon, but at least defeat it in this conflict. It was forced to retreat, and while it wouldn't be the last time it would scourge the Kawaba kingdom, they would at least give great hope to their land, showing that no matter what Uraku or his forces attempted, or how far they'd go, the dragon turtles would always find a way to combine their might and defeat the foes of the kingdom. Now this piece I find kind of interesting because scaled down at a smaller size, like for anyone watching this on their phone or like a small tablet maybe, I think at a small size it ends up looking really cool. I really like the shape and the way, the type of the head I did, the sort of partial snake but partial tiger cat kind of inspiration I took for it. All of that I think is really good, but scaled up at a larger size, like if you're watching this on a TV or something, I think it feels like it's lacking a little bit of texture. In the sky in the background, I originally planned to do like a starlit sky, as I've done a bunch of different times, but I thought that would look a little bit too peaceful for a menacing dragon, so I did a sort of like textured sky swirl, cloudy swirl kind of thing. And again, smaller scale, I think it looks good. Scaled up, I think looks a little bit cheap and thrown in. This piece also took significantly longer than I feel like it should have, as did a bunch of things in this episode. Like this one took approaching 5 hours to do, which for how it turned out, I'm like, that's a little bit much. In fact, in a bunch of episodes recently, I've been feeling like I've been moving a little bit slower than usual, so I think it might be coming up time where I need to take a week off. But I'll make sure to let people know in advance. And anyway, maybe this is one of those pieces that I'll look back on in a few weeks and be like, no, this is better than I remember. Because again, there are still lots of things that I really like about this one. And if we were just looking small scale, I would probably say it's my favorite of the episode. But I don't know, you can all let me know what you think. Let's take a look at the finished result. Now, the legends of these dragons have inspired great imaginings from children who hear the tales. Often when a group of youths will play as if they are these dragons, fighting to defend their own imaginary kingdoms, they'll go to great lengths to determine which of the dragon turtles they would most want to be. Each one was said to have a different set of strengths and different demeanor. The Crimson Snapper Dragon was known for being the bravest and most physically aggressive, sometimes also the most rage-filled. The Navy Sky Slider was the stoic leader. The Orange Box Terrariagon was the most relaxed and mischievous, but also the most caring. Well, I personally did not partake in these games much myself in my younger years, as events of my childhood made me a bit cold and self-alienating for many of my formative years, though my current life has more than made up for this period. Anyhow, now that I've looked back on these legends, I've started to speculate about which of the dragons I feel the strongest connection with today. I believe I would be most similar to the Violet Spiny Quadragon. It was considered to be the creature whose skills in combat may have slipped somewhat below its brethren, but who had a higher degree of intelligence. Among my own allies, I am certainly far from the greatest in combat skills, but I do feel my own intelligence and curiosity are some of my most useful assets. This selection from the four also feels quite fitting, as I'm quite fond of the color violet, and my own dragon ally is of both that color and even name. It did not take me particularly long to come up with this as my own answer, though I admit I also took some time to speculate which of my friends would align with which of these dragons. I understand why children enjoy this practice, and am glad I took the time to look back upon this set of legends that have entertained and inspired so many others. Now looking at this one, I kind of feel the same as with the Shredder Dragon, where it's pretty cool scaled down, but it does feel a little bit like it's lacking texture. And I think, I hadn't thought about this before, but now thinking about it, it might be because I've been doing so many Xenomorph episodes lately, and the Xenomorph drawings really just have so many built-in texture ideas and options for me to work with, that now when I look at a dragon, which is generally a bigger creature than a Xenomorph, and I have less inherent textures built into the dragon designs, that I'm like, oh, this feels a little bit odd, because if something's bigger, you know, I think it should have more smaller details built in to make it feel like it's bigger scale. That's not necessarily always true, just kind of the sort of vibe that I often feel works. And yeah, so it just, you know, it feels like this one has a lot of cool stuff going for it, but lacking a little bit of texture. Maybe I'll start trying to work more Xenomorph stuff into my dragon drawings, but I don't want them to become too similar, and in fact, I already work some Xenomorph kind of stuff into this one. But I don't know, that's something I'll have to think about and play around with. As I mentioned with the Raphael dragon, and you could possibly tell from the names of these dragons, I was taking more inspiration from the specific type of turtle that I was taking inspiration from. So for this one, I was referencing images of spiny softshell turtles. I had thought about going with the face of a spiny softshell, but they're really goofy looking faces. Like, it's not a super cool looking face like a snapping turtle. So I was like, okay, I'll just take inspiration for that from that turtle for the way I'm doing the shell and some of the pattern texture, like the colored dots all along the shell. So this one's probably got a bit less of a spiny soft shell vibe to it than the Raphael one does in terms of having a snapping turtle vibe, but I'm still glad I pulled some inspiration from that type of turtle for this. I also decided to go with 4 wings on this one, because, well, for one thing, I didn't want to just have all the turtles potentially end up being wyverns, even though obviously I would like that. It would mean there's not very much variety. And I saw this image from Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles of Donatello with sort of 4 different helicopter propeller kinds of things protruding from his jetpack backpack kind of thing. I was like, oh, that's a cool idea. I could give this dragon 4 wings. And even though it was a pain trying to position all the different limbs, the 4 wings and its regular limbs and tail, I think it was a good decision, and I'm glad I went that route with this one. I do scale up his eye at the very end, like after the recording's done, just because I don't know, I wanted his eye to be a little bit bigger. But anyway, that's the last note, so let's take a look.
Well, I wouldn't quite put this in the top tier of dragon episodes, but there are some results in there that I'm very happy with. If you want to see more dragon designs, I've got a whole bunch of dragon episodes on this channel, but I'd probably specifically recommend my recent Ben 10 Aliens as Dragons Part 2 episode, though I've got tons of other kinds of monster sorts of videos on here as well. And besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note, and the thought I want to leave people with is a quote from Marcus Aurelius, who said that if a thing is humanly possible, you should consider it within your reach. A lot of people to me have a very skewed understanding of what the term be realistic means. A lot of people say it like, well, only a small number of people achieve the thing that you're going after, so be realistic, you probably can't do it. But the fact that someone else has been able to do it should be more than enough proof to you that you can achieve that thing as well. That's what be realistic means to me, but also, even if nobody has done the thing that you want to do, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do it. I hope that's inspiring. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next episode on Monday. Goodbye.